welcome to the Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting for Monday, March 2nd, 2015. The first item of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any items that commissioners would like to add? Seeing none, motion for approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is moved. The second item is for citizen comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission this evening? Seeing none, we will move to the third item of business, which is the approval of minutes for the meeting on February 2nd, 2015. Commissioners, are there any items that you would like to add to the minutes from the last meeting?
Very good.
Seeing none, do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and it is so moved. The fourth item is to review the proposal to add a sculpture to the water features in Nicollet Commons Park. To present this proposal, we have Terry Schultz, Mary Jo Delis, and Foster Willie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I'm very excited to share a project with you this evening that would add 2 sculptures to Nicollet Commons Park, which is located in Burnsville's heart of the city area. There is a quick drawing of it on your screen at this time. It would be a project that would be sponsored by the Burnsville Community Foundation. Just to get you and others who might be watching in the right location, this is Nicollet Commons Park. That's Nicollet Avenue to the east and 126th Street West on the south side. Ames Center is on the west end, and these are the water features at Nicollet Commons Park. And the 2 red circles are the proposed locations for the 2 sculptures. This is the location in the water feature itself, and then the other one a little bit to the south would be in the garden area, a little bit southwest of the water feature location. Just to remind you again, we do have one other sculpture in this park that's part of the water feature called Centrifuge. And Foster Willie, by the way, is the artist who designed Centrifuge back about 12 years ago. The water feature sculpture itself would be placed on, we have a pedestal that's in the very western end, the western pool. It would have 3 sculpted bronze eagles attached to a stainless steel trellis, and it would be a total of 16 feet tall. There would be a ring of sculpted bronze fish at the base that would be circle around the base. There would be an 8-foot separation. It doesn't quite look that significant on this drawing, but there's 8 feet of separation from the base to the bottom of the eagles, and that was done intentional to discourage climbing on the structure itself. And then in the center, these lines that you see going up are actually water sprays from the fountain. Then off to the side in the garden area would be a 6-foot high stone pedestal. So the pedestal itself would be made of stone, and on top of that would be a 30-inch bronze eagle on top of the stone pedestal. This is again 6 feet high. Some of the details about the project, I wanted commissioners to understand that this second sculpture was always envisioned when the park was pulled together. So the foundation, there's actually lighting that was placed in place at this pool where this sculpture would go. It was all designed for this sculpture to be added. There were actually some preliminary designs that were considered, but funding just wasn't available at the time. The hopes were that we would be able to find a project sponsor to come forward and someday add this sculpture, which is where we're at today. As part of their fundraising efforts, the foundation would sell pavers as a fundraiser. And I'm going to go backwards just a couple of drawings. There are some 3 lines of pavers already existing in the plaza here that I pointed out. And the idea is that they would sell those pavers for inscription to raise money to help fund the sculpture project. I'll also point out that the foundation sells the other pavers that you see in the park along the edges and what's called the Walk of Honor in the area by the flags. The sculptures and all of the installation required would be donated. Just to put that in perspective, it's a value of about $130,000, so it's a significant donation to our community. It's proposed that a plaque be installed by each sculpture that talks a little bit about the purpose for each of the sculptures. Commissioners, you had the proposed language for those plaques in your background packets. The city would maintain the sculptures moving forward. The cost of maintaining them really is you need to polish the sculptures once a year. It's an estimated cost of about $800 per year to do the maintenance. Since the sculpture and the water features is really integral to the water feature, it makes sense that the city maintain that structure. I would also point out that, again, this is something that the city has been seeking donations for really since the park was put in, and always envisioned that would be a part of this park at some point. So it makes sense that the city would maintain it moving forward after we receive the donation. And the other thing that I would point out, we do need to, the water features are licensed much like a swimming pool, so the water is treated, and so we will need to have the Minnesota Department of Health review the proposed structure. That review is underway. We've had a couple of conversations, and of course the Department of Health would need to sign off on all the designs, and both the foundation and city staff are confident we can get the health department to review and approve the design. But that is a condition that staff has recommended you include in a motion this evening. With that, I will turn the podium over to Mary Jo DeLeese. She's with the Burnsville Community Foundation, and I'm going to say, Mary Jo, you're the project lead. I know you have lots of folks helping you. Ed Del Moro is here this evening. He also represents the Burnsville Community Foundation, and Foster Willie is here again, the sculpture artist. But I think I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jo at this point.
Thank you, Terry. As you can tell, my speaking voice does not represent the passion that we have for our project tonight. I'm sorry about that. But I have asked Foster Willie to speak, and he's going to come up and share his thoughts about the project. I am here to answer any questions, however, that you may have, so please feel free. And my official title is the Burnsville Community Foundation Vice President of Fundraising. Therefore, I am the lead. Foster?
Thanks, Mary Jo. Well, I'm delighted to be here tonight, and very, very appreciative of the Burnsville Foundation for giving me another opportunity to create something for Nicollet Commons Park. Fantastic park, and we're really pleased to be part of its kind of ongoing development. When I first met with Mary Jo and Ed, they approached me with the idea of this additional sculpture, and wanted to have it kind of commemorate Ken Slipka, who was a very important person associated with the foundation, president for a long time, and very highly regarded for his community service. And so, in conversation about him and the park, and how to come up with something that would fulfill this need, I came up with the idea of wanting to do something that would kind of connect with some of the themes that are already kind of built into the parks, like the cycles of nature that you see kind of in the water concourse, and there's already fish and frogs as part of the water feature. And so I proposed this kind of expression of nature with fish and eagles, and felt that the eagle was a very potent, very powerful symbol that has a lot of different meanings. And you know, not only as, you know, significant in terms of nature itself, but obviously our national bird and a great symbol of service. And in that way, I felt like it would be a very appropriate way to honor Ken's work. And I felt like this might be an interesting way to do it, is to have like a separate sculpture that would, you know, speak specifically to Ken's contributions, and, you know, then have this significant water feature that would kind of speak to a broader idea of the community and the surrounding habitat, Minnesota River, and this kind of thing. So those were some of the ideas that inspired the work, and as Terry mentioned, it, you know, right now we're kind of reviewing the design, refining it, and addressing any kind of safety issues. I'll be working with Commercial Aquatic, who are the designed the water feature in the park. I worked with them originally when we did Centrifuge, and they're going to help design that, the new feature. And I think it's going to be very exciting because it's going to be a little more animated than the previous, or than like Centrifuge. It'll, because it's, you know, kind of shooting up in the air a little more, and there'll be more the sound of water splashing and whatnot. So it's going to be very animated, and I think it'll be a very exciting addition to the park and its proximity to the Ames Center. So, so those are some of the ideas behind the planning of the sculpture, and hope you'll approve it. So any questions that you might have?
Yes, questions and comments from commissioners, please. Yes.
I think it's going to be a great addition as well. I'm just wondering what safety issues you're working through.
Well, for example, one of them is the water feature itself, and like how the rate that the water will be coming up, streaming out of the these little fixtures. And there are codes that are mandated, or, you know, determined by the federal government, that Commercial Aquatic, as you know, we've discussed it, and they'll be able to set the rate at a particular so much water, you know, per I forget the term, so much water per square feet, you know, the movement of it, and it will be, you know, within these federal guidelines. Some of the other concerns are just, you know, nothing sharp. We've actually are refining the base a little bit so that it's more of a step, so that, you know, we anticipate kids probably being in there. So those are a couple of things. And then, as Terry mentioned, the climbing, we elevated the eagles are in, you know, much higher up on the composition of the sculpture, so that kids won't be climbing on it. And I guess we're going to have some kind of signage too that, you know, deters kids from climbing on it. So.
I have a question about the fish portion of the sculpture. Are the fish going to be identifiable as like a native Minnesota fish? And could they be?
Well, they could be. I mean, I actually was thinking of, because I actually did the fish and frogs that are in the other, near the water wall, and I was thinking that I would do something similar to that, where they're kind of inspired by walleye, but they're very stylized. And the eagles, too, will actually be somewhat stylized. They will be very representational, but not like a super detailed, similar to the way the fish have been done.
Okay.
And that's at least my idea for now, in
Okay.
terms of how the fish would be.
If they were identifiable, I just going along with the themes of nature would be another avenue for making, helping people to make intellectual connections with the native resources. And it could even have the binomial names to identify the fish, if that was the direction that it would go.
I'll consider that.
Yeah, okay. Another question or observation I had was in the wording of the plaque. I like how you pointed out that the work itself and a lot of the theme of the park is that it's inspired by the cycles of nature, but I don't see that reflected in any of the wording on the plaque. So I don't know if that somehow could work in there about Burnsville's commitment to natural resources and sustainability. It just seems like a natural part of how you describe the sculpture. And if that was in the wording of the plaque, that would make sense and help to reinforce that idea.
Okay. Mary Jo, do you have any thoughts on that?
Everything that is mentioned this evening will certainly be taken into consideration. However, we have some limitations as far as how much wording can be put on each of the plaques, so that is yet to be decided. But we will be considering everything you have to say.
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner.
Going back to the plaque, Ken has contributed unmentionable things to serve Burnsville, but at the same time, the mention of Ken as being part of a military service in our country. We have a lot of folks in Burnsville who have served in the service. And is there any way we could make this so it just isn't a memorial to somebody that was outstanding? I mean, we've had a couple of issues dealing with people that have passed away that have made major contributions to Burnsville. And we've tried not to make, anything big like that. And, knowing Ken, he would probably say, why are you putting my name on that? But it's just, maybe think about either expanding the plaque to talk about all the veterans that have been served at Burnsville. There's nothing in Burnsville anywhere that says that, we've had service people, give their lives in service to the country. Yeah, I think with the eagles and the symbolism, maybe that would be something you might want to consider.
Thank you. I would like to address that by saying the larger piece is representing the groups of people, the people that Ken mentored, myself included. That bigger piece is where the rest of us get to speak and say we too stand for community service and giving back. And the piece really was inspired by the work of Ken. It's not considered a memorial in my mind. It's considered an inspiration. It was how he lived and what he did that inspired us to think about creating something that's uplifting and helping to make our community bigger and stronger and better. So I hear what you're saying, and I hope you can hear the distinction that I'm making. That big piece is for all of us and about all of us. Oh yeah, I might mention the Walk of Honor. That is a specific place where the Burnsville Community Foundation has sold pavers for those who have served in the military. And interestingly enough, the big piece will sit right at the end of the Walk of Honor. So to us, it's all tied together, and it says a lot about what you're saying. You'll notice I have my pin on. I believe very strongly in being patriotic, and that new piece is going to be right at that end of the Walk of Honor.
Thank you. Additional, yes.
Yeah, I have some, just a couple quick questions related to the fundraising of this. I guess one, I'm interested, has the fundraising started? And
That's a great question. Officially, no, and yet magically we're about 33% collected for the $130,000 that we need. So there is support behind this. The community foundation itself has contributed $20,000, which will be used to place 2 large pavers in that first strip of walkway that Terry shared with you, and it will list the members of the current board of the Burnsville Community Foundation. So officially no, but the money's not going to be the issue, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm.
Go ahead.
And then, so then the fund, when will we hear more about the fundraising? And
We are finishing up a marketing piece right now. Obviously, this board's approval is imperative to us moving forward. So we haven't spent any money until we know that we're going to have approval to move forward with the project. That fundraising piece will then be generated and made available to the public.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments from commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mary Jo, I believe, just from my process, I think you're going to need another sculpture, because I feel like there's a disconnect when I start at the top of the hill with Centrifuge to the rest of these sculptures. So we go from very abstract into very nature, and it would be great if there was a flow. So maybe you need we're going to have to find another sculpture within there to kind of go from, because you start at Centrifuge and we have the frogs and the fish, and then now we're going to fish and eagles. I just feel like I might need a little bit more.
I guess that'll be up to the city.
There is the water course where these little bronze shapes kind of morph into fish. And that actually is kind of the cycle of nature that I was speaking to, and kind of where I came up with the idea that here at the end would be almost like this conclusion to what's happening in the water course.
So I just need to take a left.
Yeah. Walk through that whole stream and you'll see what he's referring to.
Yep.
Very neat, thank you. Additional questions, comments from commissioners? Does staff have any questions or comments? All right. I think we're looking here for a motion to recommend to approve this proposal. Do I have that?
Motion to approve.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very kindly.
Okay.
And the motion is approved. So thank you very much, speakers, for your presentations and your time. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, number 5, review park capital improvement projects for 2015, and presenting we have Terry Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm back again, this time to talk about the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. Once a year, staff does provide an update on the plans for capital improvements in the park system. We take it 1 year at a time, although I gave you a 5-year snapshot in your backgrounds. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the years 2016 through 2019. We're going to focus on 2015, but I do hope that all the commissioners and the community as a whole will understand that we do a lot of planning work. We have an inventory of all of our major elements in our park system. We consider major any single item worth $10,000 or more, and we assign a life expectancy and replacement cost for each of those items. So we have a very detailed Excel spreadsheet that goes year by year and looks out really 30 years as to what our capital needs are to maintain our park system. So that's one very important tool that we have that guides the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. And then on top of that, we look at the Park System Master Plan and the kind of improvement, and the Trail System Master Plan, and then any improvements that we want to make to the system, and I'll be talking about those also. So we break the areas of our capital plan into 3 funding categories. One is renovation, and for 2015, we've identified $795,000 for renovation. The one exception, that is what's in the 2015 budget. You may recall in 2014 we had money set aside for the Lac Lavon ball field renovations. That money is still there and has been carried forward. It is not included in that $795,000. That's about $1.1 million that we've carried forward and I'll be talking more about Lac La Vanne as I go through the individual projects, but I did want to make you aware of that. Then also under improvements category, which is really new things, so all of that renovation money, is really just to maintain the system we have. And then for improvements, we've identified a couple of projects, and we have $190,000 that we've set aside for that. And then on trail system development, we have $2.7 million in 2015, which sounds like a really big money, a really big number. I will point out that only about $500,000 of that is actually City of Burnsville money. We are the project managers and the fiscal agents. So all of those other dollars, the 2.2 are grants from other agencies and funding support from other agencies to put the Black Dog Regional Trail in place. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through the presentation also. Specifically, under the renovation category, we have 11 projects identified. The first of which is general park amenities. We kind of loop, that's the one exception to each item has to be $10,000. We don't call out each individual picnic table and set of bleachers, so we budget $20,000 a year to replace the tables and trash barrels and bleachers and benches that are in the park system, and that's pretty much a number that we have budgeted on an annual basis for at least the last 10 years. The dugouts at Alamagna Park at Vanderlawn Field, we have scheduled to replace. The foundation has some challenges on one of the dugouts on Vanderlawn Field, and both the roofs need to be replaced. So we have allocated $30,000 to repair the dugouts at Alamagna at Vanderlawn Field. The Bicentennial Garden fountain renovations. Commissioners, we took you on a tour of the Bicentennial Gardens last year, for those of you who were on the commission, and shared with you that the garden fountain at Bicentennial Gardens has a lot of leaks, both in the foundation and then internal to the structure. It is 40 years old. Commissioner Nachman and I were talking about that. He was involved in when it was originally installed. And we have literally put pipes within the pipe in the structure to the point where we just can't do that anymore. We need to basically replace the structure and do all new pipes. And the goal is part of this project is really to have it look like it does now when we're all done. We'd like to also make some improvements to the garden area. We have set aside $165,000 of that money for this project. We estimate the fountain repairs will be about $125,000 of that. And then we'd like to do some work in the garden areas. Some of the retaining walls need replacement while we're in there so that we do all the renovation on that site while we're in there. Commissioners, that will come back for your review. I'll point that out at the end of the presentation also. And we'll be involving the Historical Society in that project along with the Sweet Sioux Garden Club, who's very much involved in maintaining the gardens for us. So we will have some partners that will be working with us as we embark on fixing the Bicentennial Garden fountain. The next project on our list is Lac La Vanne irrigation and fencing. And Commissioners, I think I shared with you last year that you know that we were going to do irrigation, fencing, and we were also going to replace the building. And those bids came in high, and so what we've decided to do is to break it into 3 phases. And one of those phases is just irrigation, and we are out to bid on that now. In the next phase, we will go out in May, and that will be the fencing and the asphalt in the interior of the complex. And then the third phase would be the building itself, and that would be in the 2016 budget. Council has asked staff to put that on their work session agenda in the early part of 2016 to talk about that building and what we want to do with it. So for now, we're going to proceed with these first 2 phases. We've shared what those 2 phases are about with this commission before, so we don't really plan on bringing that back before you. We really aren't changing anything other than to break it into separate pieces. And the thinking behind that is we will get people who specialize in doing that particular work, and we will get better prices. When you lump all those things together, you get general contractors who then charge a markup on subcontractors. And we're really looking to get at an irrigation person to bid on this phase and a fencing person to bid on the other phase. And we're hopeful that that will bring our prices down. We're also hopeful that the timing will be better and prices will come down. We'll get those two pieces done, and then we'll see where we're at with the whole project budget and look at the building for 2016 at the end of the season. So the building portion would come back to you in 2016. We have repairing tennis courts at Colonial and Wood Parks. We have about $40,000 set aside. Those are just crack repairs, and then anytime you go in and repair cracks, you have to color coat, put the color coating on the courts and redo the lines and so forth. And again, we have $20,000 per court set aside to do the courts at Colonial and Wood Parks. We have $5,000 set aside to replace the backstop on the ball field at Wood Park. And then we have about $85,000 set aside to do a complete replacement of both the tennis and half-court basketball at Valley Highlands. That court is in really tough shape, and it's beyond repair, so we really need to go back down to the base, fix the base on the tennis court, and the same thing with the basketball court, and so it's a little more expensive project. We'll be taking everything out and replacing it, so fencing, asphalt, and restoring the base and adding some drain tiles to that. We have sections where the posts have heaved up out of the ground as much as 6 to 8 inches on some of the corners there. So we are looking to replace playground border at Keller Park. That's allocated for $12,000. A few of our parks we now have concrete borders on any of our new playgrounds. We still have some wood structures in. They don't hold up as well, obviously, and so we are putting concrete in anytime we take out the wood borders, and the concrete has worked very well for us. Same thing with volleyball borders. We have wood borders in almost all of our volleyball courts currently, and those that have been in the ground for a while need to be replaced. And so we are going to take on West Buck Hill and Lac Lavon picnic area volleyball courts, replace the borders there. We have $19,000 set aside for that. We had a project to reconstruct all the park trails in Colonial Park. And we always take a look at our preliminary estimates that are in that CIP document I referred to and refine them and go out on site and take a look at the work that needs to be done. When we did that for Colonial Park, we found that our budget numbers are way too low. We probably we had $63,000 set aside for that project. We probably need almost twice that amount to do it the way we should do it. We've got some erosion problems that we need to fix around the backstop area. And as we thought about it, staff, it didn't make sense to just go in and do half the project. Really, if you're going to go into a park, let's go in and do all the trails at one time. And so what staff is suggesting is that we just go ahead and postpone that project to 2016. We'll carry forward the money we have, add some additional funds to it, and then do the entire project in 2016. And the last project on the list is we have $85,000 of that renovation money set aside to replace the flooring and the roof in the Neal Recreation Building. If there's money left over, we'd like to do some upgrades to the electrical system. That is, Mr. Ryan will correct me, I believe our most popular rental facility by far. That facility is busy almost every weekend with rentals in the summer, and then in the winter it's our warming house. So very well utilized building. Commissioners, those are the renovation projects we have planned for 2015. Any questions on those before I move on?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I was interested in the fencing at the Lac Lavon. Does that include increasing the height of the backstops?
It does. I think, Commissioner Ulrich, you went out on the tour, and so it really is the package that we shared with you when we were on the tour. So right now the backstops are at 24 feet with a hood, and they will be 30 feet straight up. The hood really doesn't serve much purpose unless you put the home plate right underneath it, which isn't the case. So most of the newer designs now have just a straight backstop. This would be 30 feet, and it would also extend it down the first and third base lines more than it is now. And you may recall we talked about wanting to do that for the situations where we have youth baseball, girls fast pitch softball. It's just we have a lot of foul balls going into the people who are in the inner part of that complex, and they're not looking for it. They may be watching another game. So we will fix those issues as part of this.
Okay,
What?
yes, Commissioner.
So all the money that we have talked about it's not including the Lac Lavon Park. I just want to maybe clarify myself too. So all you have talked about, there is list of things and there is lines with Lac Lavon. And so the money, that 700 plus that we talked about, is out. It's not nothing. None of the money is going to Lac Lavon. That's a separate set of money.
Commissioner Raouf, almost. We carried forward about 1.1 million from last year
Correct.
for Lac Lavon. We added $270,000 of this renovation money that I pointed out, the 795,000.
Something, yeah.
270 of that is additional money for Lac Lavon for the fencing piece.
Okay, so that's included in that. Okay, thank you.
Other questions on renovation?
Yeah, questions? Looks like,
One more. So when we say improvements, we are basically talking about additions.
Correct.
So it's, okay, just wanted to clarify that.
And it's a bit of a judgment, when we improve Lac Lavon, we're improving the fencing, we're making it 6 feet higher, but we just kind of make a judgment as to, is it kind of a new item to the park or just fixing an existing item in the parks.
Thank you.
So in the improvement projects, we do have the addition of the splash pad for Lions Park. We have lots of people waiting for that project to get put in place. We get quite a few calls on it. I'll just remind you that the Lions donated $70,000 towards that project last year. We had hoped to do this last year. Construction projects are skyrocketing, and we couldn't get what we wanted for $70,000. So the city has matched the Lions $70,000 in the CIP. And so we are moving forward with pulling together a $140,000 project to add a splash pad to Lions Playground. And commissioners, that will come before you at your next meeting in April. The other item that's a new improvement item allocated in the budget is an access road for a future parking expansion at Black Dog Park. The football field at Black Dog Park, when it's in use, we do have a shortage of parking. We do have some area that's kind of in a gravel area. It was used for construction purposes for some sewer line work that would kind of serve as an overflow parking area. We just need to get people back to it. And so this project would put that entrance road along the south side of the football field. If you can picture that, if you've been down at the park, and kind of get folks to that gravel area. And then down the road, we will actually have to pave that gravel area, because that is part of city code. But at least we're going to phase it in and get immediate access to those extra parking spaces. Any questions on the park improvement projects?
questions from commissioners? Looks like we're good.
And the last category is trail system projects. We have two projects that are funded in the 2015 CIP. I'm not going to talk a lot about the Big Rivers Regional Trail. We've talked a lot about it as a commission, and I know you're well aware of the plans. I will just share that it's, again, about a $2.7 million project, and the city's really only having to fund about $500,000. We are the fiscal agents and the project managers. We expect construction to begin this summer. It will take place in two phases. And so we will do from 35W to the plant basically in 2015, and then from the plant east to Cedar Avenue will happen in 2016. The Rose Bluff Kramer Nature Preserve Trail. Commissioners, I believe you reviewed the Rose Bluff plans. That was before you last year. And we built into that a trail that would run along the kind of the east and north side of that, that would connect Williams Drive, run along St. James Church, down the bluff line into the Kramer Nature Preserve. We didn't have any funding when we put that in. It's just rough graded, and the thoughts were that we would pursue grants to make that trail connection. We got a call from Dakota County late in the year, and they said, well, we have some money that we'd be willing to put at that connection. We've got about $170,000 that they said they could put towards this project. This is one, so we put it in our CIP. The city added $20,000 for some of the design work. And what we found when we did preliminary designs is that the cost of that project, because of the steep slopes, is really closer to $600,000 to $700,000 rather than $190,000. So I have a little note on there that that's been postponed indefinitely. I think we'll use some of that money to take a look at some designs and get some better cost estimates. But we're going to have to go back to the drawing board on that one and see if we can't find a cheaper alternative to get down that bluff. But it's got some challenges with the terrain. So for now, and I believe that section was on your work plan, so we would also pull that off your work plan and put it on at a future time once we know we have funding. With that, Commissioners, I'll just point out again, there would be additional Parks Commission review on the Bicentennial Garden renovations. We've got it tentatively slotted on your May agenda. That could lag till June. ICS is really doing that project in the fall. And then the other one that will come before you, and that will be before you in April, is the splash pad project. We hope to have the splash pad put in sometime this summer. If all goes well, we could have that in by the end of July. So we're going to move along as quickly as we can on that. If you have concerns about proceeding with the projects, I guess this is the time where, I'd like to hear your concerns. We don't bring back a lot of these renovation projects. It's replacing asphalt and fencing, and so we would not bring them back to you again. We would just move forward, and staff is requesting a motion to approve all those other projects with the exception, knowing that Bicentennial Garden and Lions Playground will come back before you. With that, I would stand for any questions or comments that you have.
Okay, questions and comments from commissioners on the planned projects? All of our concerns were addressed. Okay, so now we're looking for a motion to approve the project plans.
Motion to approve.
And second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, and the motion is so moved. Thank you, Terry, for the presentation. That brings us to the sixth item of the meeting, which is miscellaneous, and I believe you have some items for us, JJ?
I do have a few items for you. Commissioners, I'd like to point out that on February 17th, Council approved your work plan, thanks to the presentation by Vice Chair Raouf for taking care of it that night, but they did move forward with that and did approve it. Also that evening, the Council approved their ends and outcomes, and I included in your packets a red line version of the ends and outcomes so you can see just how many of the recommendations that you folks had for council were included in their approval, and it went through. Their approval did go through, so all of those red line versions have been approved for 2015 ends and outcomes.
I don't see any red lines. There's not very many. Okay.
This,
Some things are striked out.
yeah, some things that you were changing some language on a few items, and I could go through it, I guess, if you'd like. Commissioners, it was your work. that you addressed at a work session back in January, I believe, so.
I recall. Anybody need to go through this line by line? I think we're okay.
Okay. And then the last item I have for you, Commissioners, is that your next commission meeting is scheduled for April 6th. At this time, we will be meeting tentatively. We're scheduled to meet in this room. However, we do have some projects that are coming into the council chambers here, and hopefully everything will stay on track, and we'll be able to hold our meeting here. If not, we will be meeting downstairs on April 6th.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from commissioners on tonight's proceedings? If not, then I think our next item is to adjourn. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Right.
Second.
Thank you, Maruf, and a second from Len. Okay, all in favor of adjourning?
All right.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, the motion is so moved. That brings us to the end of our formal meeting agenda. Thank you for attending or watching the Burnsville Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting.